There's a new iPad mini. It has been 3 years, and while there aren't any huge changes here, the ones that they have made were needed. Hello, my name is Brad. I review tech for creative professionals, and I love the form factor of this tiny little tablet. It's like a really big phone. This year, they popped in a new processor. It's now an A17. It supports the latest Apple Pencil Pro, and they've bumped up the base storage configuration from 64 gigs to a more respectable 128. The real appeal of the iPad for me is the size. That remains unchanged. This is the most comfortable iPad to hold and read on and just throw in a bag and take it with you. It is like the perfect digital sketchbook. And the great thing about iPad apps is even when you get to a smaller size, there's still plenty of room to draw because so many of the interfaces of drawing and painting apps are so minimalist. And also, this thing just looks cute. Now, if you're curious how this device stacks up against other tablets that I've reviewed, whether they're Android or Wacom tablets or things like that, I rank all the tech that I review over on my website. There's also links out to the product and those reviews so you can watch them there if you want to. It's basically everything in one easy to find place. This mini comes in 4 colors: purple, blue, space gray, and starlight. That starlight is like a silver with a touch of goldish in it. All of these colors are pretty subdued. The one I have here is blue. I do like the colors of the portfolio covers that they have here. Mine is denim to kind of go along and match that blue. They are a bit more bold than the iPad itself. I also like that the portfolio cover lets you set this up at like a media viewing angle or down at a more comfortable drawing angle. Now, the iPad Air has gone down the route of the M series processors. It's currently supporting the M2 chip in the latest iPad Air, which came out this spring. Apple puts the same chips in their laptops. I would expect the Mini to do the same, but instead what we're getting here is an A17 Pro. Now, this is the same processor we saw in last year's iPhone 15 Pro. This is more than enough horsepower to handle any drawing app that you're going to be able to throw at it. Apple's big push this year, like every other tech company in the known universe, is into AI. This chip has big upgrades to the neural engine needed to handle many of the new tricks that this device is doing. So apps can now learn your handwriting over time and then clean it up for you when you're writing, or you can remove things from photos. And finally, there's a calculator app, and they've added some like ways that you could jot down an equation and just have the app solve it for you. Now, the display on this iPad, very similar to last time around, and they're calling this a liquid retina display. It's an 8.3-inch LCD panel. It does look really good, even though OLED tends to be better. It tends to get brighter. This is a high quality LCD display. Now, whenever Apple releases a new mid-tier product, the same complaint pops up all the time. 60 hertz display, unacceptable. Now, for me, it is acceptable. Not a deal breaker, but if you are on team unacceptable, I get it. This isn't for you. When you get screens with a higher refresh rate, you're going to get better animations. It's just going to be a smoother experience overall. When we're talking about drawing, however, it's a little bit more of a mixed bag that is going to help cut down on drawing lag. However, what I find on iPads, especially when we're talking about apps like Procreate and some of the other apps out there, they're so well optimized for the iPad that lag really isn't a problem. So if I slow this down and kind of compare this to like an iPad Pro that does have that higher refresh rate, I can see the difference. But it's not huge. If I need to slow the footage down for us to see it, it's probably not that big a deal. Now, over on the Android side, those mid-tier tablets that have been coming out lately do come with a higher refresh rate, right? The Tab S9 FE has a 90 hertz refresh rate. The OnePlus Pad has 144 hertz. So this is kind of becoming the industry standard, but Apple hasn't quite caught up there yet. Now, this is kind of interesting, at least to me. The camera is staying in the same location it was before, portrait top, while on larger iPads, it has moved to the side or landscape top. Now, there is no right or wrong way to hold an iPad, but looking at Apple's site, you can see that most of the images they show of this iPad have it being held in that portrait orientation, kind of like it's a big phone. And when you think about it that way, it makes sense to keep the camera there. This brings us to an issue that many people noticed with the last iPad mini, and that's something called jelly scroll. What happens is when you change the image that's being displayed on your screen, it refreshes that image line by line, pixel by pixel. It goes from the top of the screen and line by line all the way down to the bottom. But it does it so fast that your eye can't really see it. usually. What was happening here with that old Mini is that it was meant to be displayed in that landscape mode. So when you turned it to portrait, instead of the lines refreshing up and down, they were refreshing left to right. So when you scrolled a web page, you could see something that looked kind of like screen tearing. It broke that illusion and didn't look smooth. I tried to replicate it here to see if it was improved. I can't really see, but I have a feeling that this is going to be under the magnifying glass over the next few weeks. I'm really curious to see what other people find. Gonna take a little detour here in this part to talk a little bit about gaming, because a lot of people love to game on the iPad, specifically this little Mini. And I can see why. A lot of games have on-screen controls, and this is bigger than an iPhone, so it's just easier to hit those and maneuver. But on a bigger iPad, it's so big that it's like a little bit harder to hold. It's a little bit harder to reach those things with your thumbs. So this iPad kind of hits that Goldilocks zone for that sort of thing. I'm gonna make a whole video about what it's like to game on the iPad Mini. That's not normal content for my channel, but hey, sounds like fun, and I want to play with it, so I'm going to do it. If you want to see that, come back later this week, maybe early next week, or hit subscribe so you don't miss the video. I'm going to be talking about what it's like to stream from my PC or my PlayStation. Xbox has some streaming features. I'm not sure how those work on iOS or iPad OS yet. And also, there's new emulation apps available in the App Store that are worth checking out. So there's a lot to cover there. I'm looking forward to it and trying it out on this little powerhouse. Okay, gaming out of the way, let's talk about drawing, because this is great for sketching. It's just such a nice little compact sketchbook that you could take anywhere with you. And if you're not drawing on this thing, you really are missing out with that Apple Pencil Pro. But if you do want to draw, you should check out my courses. There's one called Learn to Draw in 60 Days, which covers all the basics, where every day there's a new lesson. We learn a new fundamental of art, and there's homework that goes along with it, so you can reinforce those skills. By the end of that, you're going to be equipped to take on really complex, more like intricate tutorials that you find online. There's also Intro to Digital Art, which covers how I do some of my art, like the stuff I'm drawing here in the background. Anyway, bradsartschool.com if you'd like to learn more about those courses. All right. So one of the big updates here is Apple Pencil Pro support. And the big addition to the Apple Pencil Pro this year is the barrel. When you squeeze the barrel of the Apple Pencil, in some apps, you get like a context-sensitive menu. It also has rotation features built into the barrel too. So if you're drawing a line or painting in some apps, you can turn that and it's going to change the paintbrush. There's a haptic engine in the pencil that makes it feel like your pencil is actually being squeezed. When the iPad is off and you try squeezing your pencil, nothing. It's as hard as a rock, solid plastic. It's crazy that a haptics engine could kind of trick your mind into thinking something is happening when it's really not. I like how Adobe Fresco has implemented this. It brings up this little brush palette. It's a little thing, but being able to change your colors or your brush size or that sort of thing, like right there on the screen without having to like move all the way to the side, move over here and move around, was really surprisingly useful. Procreate lets you do things like if you squeeze the barrel, it can change tools. That's customizable, so it's like, okay, I want to squeeze it, change to the eyedropper. Maybe I want to squeeze it, bring up the quick menu. Then there's Apple's freeform note-taking app, where they have this super cool implementation. You can see the Apple Pencil shadow when you hover over the app itself. That kind of, if you're in a pencil, it looks like a pencil. If you're in an ink pen, it kind of looks like an ink pen. And of course, if you squeeze the barrel, that's going to bring up a context-sensitive menu with all sorts of different tools and adjustments to those tools. Now, I do occasionally get false positives with the barrel squeeze, like if I hold the pencil too tightly, which happens a lot. Like if I'm trying to get accurate artwork, I tuck my thumb in and I squeeze. It's a bad habit, and I often get those false positives when I'm trying to get those super clean lines. So if I'm doing that kind of work, I can easily go into the settings and I can like just turn this off completely. It also lets me go in there and map that barrel squeeze to different functionalities in different apps. I can even go into the iPad settings, build my own shortcuts, map that to the barrel squeeze instead, and when you start doing that sort of thing, there's a ton of versatility. It's also worth noting that the USB Apple Pencil also works on this iPad. I would, though, stay away from that one. It is a lot cheaper. It's only $80, so you're going to save a lot of money, but it doesn't have pressure sensitivity, and that is a huge bummer, especially if you're an artist. If you're just getting started here, you do want to avoid that. If all you're going to be doing is taking notes or tapping around on the screen, it's fine for that. But for art, you really do want that pressure sensitivity. So that is the new iPad mini. I think it's just a little update, but it's a good update, right? You get a bump to the storage to something like more respectable. You get that Apple Pencil Pro support, just little things that really kind of bring it up to speed. And of course, obviously the processor, which is going to mean that you can go longer before you have to upgrade it again. And this fits well into Apple's lineup, kind of coming in above the price of the standard iPad, but below the price of the iPad Air. But what do you think? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.